Ben, nice to see you. Thank you for your time. Have you come down from the highs of Leeds? Because that was an extraordinary game to watch. It must have been unbelievable to be such a big part.
Yeah, it was. It was an incredible game. Yeah, I've spoken a bit over the last few days, a couple of interviews, and the luxury of having a newborn baby is you kind of, no matter how the week's gone, you come back to reality pretty quick. So it's been really nice to kind of go home and spend time with family and take my mind off cricket. And even just the drive down to Birmingham today, I suddenly like switching back on and thinking about this week again.
So in terms of that last day, just talk us through your emotions as you were right in the thick of it, right in the battle, then eventually get out, and then you're sitting up watching and you can do nothing about it.
Yeah, well that's the hardest thing. I hated every second really of sitting up there. You're thinking potentially you've played the best innings of your life, and you might still not get over the line, but yeah, to have the calmness of Joe Root out there, and he's gone under the radar massively. I think if we'd have lost a couple of wickets there, it could have been a different story.
In terms of how you planned that innings and how you went about it tactically, that's got to be by far and away the best that you've done. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, from start to finish, I don't know why, but I felt pretty good, first innings and second innings. Just some weeks click, and the bat just felt great in my hands. And I think the thing I'm most proud about was probably the different stages of that innings.
Up and down through the gears.
Obviously, the first, in my eyes, the most important bit was that first period the night before. If we're 10 for 2 there chasing 370, the game is not far off being done. So to get through that period, obviously I know people laugh about it when I do, but leaving Bumrah first ball kind of
you left 2 on the spin, you know that.
Sure, yeah, I did. But that it kind of showed my intent. Like, I was doing everything I can to be there in the morning. I wanted to give myself the opportunity to wake up that next morning and go, we could do something special today.
If I take you back 2 years, would you have played Bumrah in the same way, with that sort of respect, that understanding of the game situation, or would you have gone out and attacked him? Have you dialed it down a little bit as an individual and perhaps as a side?
Yeah, definitely as a side, and that message has come from Stokesy and Baz. 2 years ago, I'd have probably, maybe rather than leave him, I'd have probably tried to scoop him for 6 and set the tone that way. And I think that comes from a maturity level, but also the message that we've been given down from coach and captain. So we've spoken about Jasper a lot, and I think it's very clear to say now he's one of the best bowlers in the world, but we've proved that we can deal with him, and he can go wicketless on the last day of a test match. And I think individually that's just about how we prepare for him. For me it was about, certainly that new ball was going to be the toughest part of the innings, and it was about getting through that. I kept saying to Zach, I don't care if he bowls a maiden after maiden, we'll score at the other end.
Problem is, you had to score off the other end of Jadeja, who had a whole heap of rough outside your off stump. What were your plans? How were you going to go about that?
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear what the plan was, and that was the longest I've probably had a short leg in when I've scored runs. And they, to be fair to them, they kept their attacking fielders in. They made it very certain they didn't want me sweeping the ball, which allowed me to hit through the offside. And it felt like, with it spitting out the rough, it wasn't necessarily easy, but it felt like that was the easiest way for me to score runs and put pressure back on him. It's actually easier in a run chase because you need to score the runs and you're not looking to survive. And I feel like my best way of survival in that situation would be to be playing the exact same way.
What's the key to that shot?
My biggest thing is, getting my head as close to the ball as possible. If someone plays a normal sweep shot, their body weight's not back, it's over the ball. And with the rough like that, I actually spoke to Stokesy when he came in at tee, because he was playing it every ball, and I spoke to him about he was just going slightly too far across, which, if it does hit the rough, you're then showing all your stumps.
Can you coach me here then? Because I was very limited left-hander. My basic thing was left arm spinner like Jadeja. That's pretty much all I had, maybe with a shut my eyes sweep. But when it's in the rough like that, if you're talking to a kid that's having to deal with that, what do you do?
Well,
come on, get in your batting position.
Firstly, I think it's always a shot that's been very natural to me from the age of kind of 11, 12 playing hockey. So, when I talk about coaching it, sometimes it's not as easy because I've never kind of had to do it. But, let's where the rough,
Rough sort of here.
where the rough normally
Well,
is,
fact, but-
it's exactly where a good length is and the perfect ball for a sweep shot. You know, so when I say that, if I get myself into this position where the ball is, I'm so close to it and you can almost smother it. You know, if he then misses the rough, it's not going to spin, or it shouldn't spin, so you should be in a good enough position to deal with it anyway. You know, the main thing I'd want to do with that rough in the fourth innings is firstly get my leg outside the line.
Do you change your guard?
Well, I'd be over to off stump anyway, and then I know as soon as this goes towards the rough, it's outside the line. So I'm basically trying to say, you can't get me out of EW, you can't get me out bowled. The only way you can get me out is caught. Trying to narrow down the options of how he gets me out. You know, so I'm almost at peace. If I top edge a reverse sweep and I get caught, that's okay. Like, you know, I don't want to do that, but I'm trying to take all the other dismissals out. So I'm not going to get stumped, I'm not going to get bowled or LBW, like I said. And then, you know, when you're actually accessing and hitting the ball, in my head before I play the shot, I'll have an idea of where I want this to go, but then always a plan B, you know. So I think the six is a good example. I hit a load of sweeps down.
Yeah.
The wind was going all the way over that way, and I felt like if he did miss the rough this side, it's not going to spin. So that was a good example of just the wind's going that way. I've moved him way finer because of that one. It's almost a free hit because if I do top edge it, there's no one here. It's probably going to go for runs anyway, and if I do get it, and thankfully I did, it should go, you know, for four, but if I get it well enough for six.
In fairness to your captain, he probably hit the rough more consistently to Ben Stokes than he did to you. There was one that really jumped to you, he just clipped the edge, but then he started going a little wider to Stokesy.
Yeah, well, you know, Stokesy almost did all the hard work there. You know, he didn't nail loads of them, but he actually got rid of short leg. You know, and that's a big part of my batting is I'll try and do everything I can to get rid of him, and then life becomes a lot easier. So if they had have moved short leg to, let's say, short third man for me, I'd have potentially then gone, I'll put this away for 5-10 minutes, you know, hopefully try and milk him in here a few times for one, then he comes back in, and then I'd have gone straight back to it.
Yeah, okay.
So it's more about trying to limit the way I get out. You know, when he stood there, I feel like that one occasion where I play a forward defence, that could just be the one ball that goes to him, which is why I played so many reverse sweeps, just thinking I'm more at peace getting out this way, because at least I'm trying to score runs and put pressure on him as opposed to just sitting there.
Can I take you back to when you broke your hand? Just explain the process of coming back from that, how you did it, what it took, and how it affected the way you played.
Yeah, I mean, it did in a weird way, because I basically came back too early and probably had I can't remember what year, maybe 2017. I think for that whole summer, I mean, there's pictures of me with like my bottom hand off the bat. Kind of had to find a way to, you know, get through that summer, and, you know, without having an operation, you know, and that was also probably just after I'd been dropped, you know, so it was an incredibly tough time. I remember I think I did okay that summer, but I think expectations of the year before, you know, felt like, yeah, a lot of, yeah, it was tough. Numbers probably weren't that bad, but yeah, I think I had an operation the next winter. You know, then going through all the rehab stuff and picking up a bat again for the summer after. Yeah, it was strange because I kind of forgot how I'd held the bat growing up as a kid, and it's probably a tough place to be because you do it for so many years and everything feels natural, and then suddenly, you know, I felt like I kind of had to find where my hands were supposed to be on the bat, and I'll be honest, probably up until, you know, I'm talking there probably 7 or 8 years ago, until probably about a year ago, I'm probably only just about getting back to where I was there. I'll still pick up a bat now and it feels great, and then as soon as I put my gloves on, this bottom hand takes over a little bit. But you know, I wouldn't change anything now at the minute. It feels like it's going okay, but yeah, it was certainly a difficult time.
You've had a few bumps in the roads off the field down the years. What advice would you give to your younger self now?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, try and make it easier for yourself. I wouldn't necessarily, you know, I was a young kid with, you know, confidence, and certainly wasn't always the best behaved, but you know, I think the game needs characters. I don't know, I'm backing myself here years on later, but you know, I would try and make my career a lot easier, and there's so many times as a professional sportsman to, you know, enjoy good times off the field and do things in the right way, which I still do now. You know, not getting caught up in silly little things that are going to get yourself in trouble and, you know, potentially, you know, have an impact on your career for a few years. So I'd certainly keep a few of my attributes as a youngster, but I'd get rid of a couple as well.
What have you learned about dealing with people like me and the media over the last few years in terms of certain comments that have been said by you and then perhaps taken slightly out of context?
Well, I mean, firstly, it's part and parcel, isn't it? You know, you're playing at the highest level, you're always going to be judged on what you do as a cricketer and what you say. And, you know, I think certainly in the media, the last year's been a massive learning curve for me. Doing stuff in the media I've always enjoyed and always thought generally I'm all right at, and I try and keep things, you know, as honest as possible. And I think, you know, probably over the last 6 months I've got it wrong in the sense of we've got a clear message in the dressing room, and probably openly saying that too much in the media, you know, when I necessarily don't agree with some of the things I'm saying. But you know, I think now, you know, we've changed as a group, and we've got this clear, you know, game plan about winning. If I look at last week and I look at the third test in New Zealand, you know, where backs are up against the wall, you know, our bowling coach now, Timmy Southey's running in at me and I want to whack him. We've got 10 overs to bat that night. I don't regret many things I've done in England shirt, but I think I would have gone about that slightly differently when I ran down at him, hit him for 4, ran down again, chopped on, bowled. You know, I think how quickly, yeah, it's only a few tests ago, but how quickly our mindset's changed to now, you know, them facing Bumrah running down the hill and grafting to get through to the next day, shows just where we've moved to as a group. And I think just the small things that, you know, like that, and just our mindset changing, I think, you know, fans will see that and they'll be happy with us.
How do you get away from the game? Lovely golden retriever and a beautiful little girl. Where's your happy place to get away from cricket now?
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to get away from it now for me, and it's, you know, it's not really something I choose. I think my fiancée Paige actually said to me in New Zealand after a tough game, she said, you know, Margot doesn't care that you've not got any runs.
Go and change the nappy.
Yeah, literally. And it is almost like a great bit of, you know, not advice from her, but what she said, you know, she'll smile or cry at me, you know, if I score 150 against India on day 4, or if I get 0, you know, the week before. It doesn't change, and it's quite refreshing. And, you know, I'm certainly still learning as a dad and stuff, but, you know, those moments I get at home now, with obviously being away a lot, you know, I'm just trying to cherish them, and it's been really good for my game. I think, you know, myself 5 years ago, if I'd have gone away from that game last week, I'd have probably enjoyed it more than I should have done, and then I'd have probably sat and watched myself on YouTube and watched the highlights over and over, and just probably thought about the game in the whole week building up. And you get to Birmingham for the second test and you're mentally fried, and whether it's good or bad, I think it's just an amazing switch off.
So you've nailed the technique for reverse sweep. Have you nailed the nappy changing?
I think I'm all right at the nappy changing. I think my partner would say I've probably got a bit to learn on, but yeah, I'm trying my best.
Great to see you.
Cheers,
Thank
buddy.
you for your time. Well
Thanks,
played
mate.
as well.
Thank you.